Hey G Session viewers, my name is Alyssa Kritzman and I'm the design director for G Project, which is a public art campaign transforming negative ideas about immigrants. Because after all, we are all immigrants. Everyone has a personal journey and story about how their family found themselves in the US. Like myself, I'm a G1 on my father's side and then a G2 on my mother's side. So what does that mean? G0 means you came from elsewhere. G1, your parents were born elsewhere and you were born here. G2 is that your parents were born here, but their parents were born elsewhere, and so forth. So for season 3, we are very excited because we are inviting our previous G Session guests to invite someone that they know and interview them to ask the big question: what is your G status? The cool thing about this is we are now creating a web of immigrant stories that are truly connected through storytelling and personal artifacts. So without further ado, please have a listen to today's session. And at the end of the video, my colleague, Richard Pelzer, will let you know how you can participate and keep up with our project.
Hey, my name is Bob London, and I am here with the G Sessions. It's my pleasure to host one of the season 3s. And today I bring my good friend, Eva. Me and Eva didn't work. We go to the dog park every morning, and Eva brings her daughter there on the way to school. And how great is that? Someone gets to have their dog drop them off at school every day, one of the little bonuses of New York City. So, Eva, we're going to bring you on, and we're going to ask you, what is your G status?
Hello, Bob. Hi.
Hey.
So, again, my name is Eva Ruiz, and my G status on both sides of my family is G1. My parents were both the immigrants to the United States.
Right. So that's actually a little unusual. Like, I'm a G2 and a G3, you know, sometimes depending on maternal, because things get mixed, but you're a solid G1.
Solid G1. Parents met at 14 in Spain.
Excellent. So, Eva, you were born in the U.S. and your parents have an interesting story. They came here to study in Minnesota. Is that right?
In Minnesota, they came from Spain to Minnesota. My dad came to study, and they left.
Right. All right. And then, so you were born here in Minnesota, in the cold country. So just tell us about, I mean, that must have been a struggle because they decided to stay, right? And that's not necessarily so easy.
Well, I think that for my parents, they met, like I said, when they were 14 in Spain. They got married roughly 10 years later, and they were both studying medicine. My dad got the opportunity to study in Minnesota at the Mayo Clinic. Right. And it was a fantastic opportunity, so they took it. And eventually from there, what happened was they both finished their studies while they were in Minnesota, and I was born in that time. And soon thereafter, they moved to Los Angeles. So that's actually where I call home, as in terms of where I grew up. Right,
but your mom didn't speak English, I understand, right, when she got here?
Not one word of English when she first got here. She says she essentially credits Sesame Street for her English.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have to see Sesame Street in Spanish. That's a good trick. Okay.
Well, no, she watched it. Exactly. No, it is a good way.
Okay, so that must have been hard. I mean, that's amazing, though. That's really hard task. And then she got her medical degree. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She was all those tests. Right. So then what happened? You moved. So they decided to stay. And then they were able to do that. Not so easy. Of course, they had professions that perhaps that enabled it to go a little easier. And then you ended up in LA.
Yes. So by the time I was 2.5, my mom was pregnant again with my brother, David, and they had moved to Los Angeles. And by then, I think they had it more in their head that they wanted to be in the United States for longer. And at that point, both of them had jobs scored away in LA. I don't, when the difficulty would be in language and in transplanting, but I don't know that their story would be one of, a story of difficulty, I would say. I mean, for the most part, they came here for opportunity. My dad really wanted to, he's a cardiologist, so he really wanted to excel in cardiology, which was not an opportunity necessarily afforded in Spain at the same level than it was in the United States. So that was the catalyst. So
yeah, well, that brings us, to the fact that we as a country are more empowered because we have your parents became American, essentially. Dual citizenship, I would believe.
Dual for all of us. All of us. I still to this day hold both passports. I very much hold to both my nationalities.
Right. As Ronald Reagan says, you can come here and become an American. That's the unique part of this country. And that gives us strength, that we gather the strength of many countries. And your family, I think, just accentuates that. I mean, he's a cardiologist doing great work and well needed. And not an opportunity you availed to him in Spain, you say. So, but there were some struggles. I mean, talk about your mom's one thing that irked her continuously.
And continues to this day to irk her is the fact that because both my parents have very thick accents, my mom has always talked about the fact that many Americans will speak louder when they hear an accent, as if volume is the barrier. And the reality is my mom's been here for 40 plus
years
at this point. and therefore,
yes.
So, she never lost her accent, but her English is fantastic. It's perfect. It's fine. So, the fact that people will often mistake accents for hearing impairment is frustrating at most,
Yeah, well, I think that goes to many Americans don't travel enough, to be honest with you. And they have this whole thing of, they have to speak. They just don't know. They don't know. Like that would never happen in Europe, I don't think, right? With someone.
Oh, no, it would happen in Europe too.
It would happen in Europe too?
It would definitely happen in Europe too. I think that it's the common misconception of anyone who hasn't put themselves out of their comfort zone, and to understand the effort that it takes to do that, especially if you're actually moving out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I think
a constant reminder for her though that she's, different, right? I mean that must have drove her nuts, I would think.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know that my mom would see herself in that light so much, but it is. I mean, it definitely is a frustration in having an accent. I know she wishes she didn't have an accent.
Well, I don't know. Many movie stars do very well when they have their accents. Seems to be sexy.
Well, it's never really. I mean, at the end of the day, I think people find my parents' accents very intriguing.
Right.
For both of them.
I would. So, but your family. So, living in LA, you're a native bilingual Spanish-English family. You don't move around like some people do. I mean, you're in the neighborhood. Yeah. So how was that growing up there in LA? Like what trials, tribulations, issues being an immigrant?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that the thing that stands out for me growing up is that when I was little, very often people really had, very often were ignorant about Spain. They knew that at most I spoke Spanish, but that was never people's first assumption. I think the Ruiz is the tip-off, but other than the Ruiz, there was no other tip-off in our family that especially in the U.S., I think that people have a notion that Spanish speakers have more indigenous features, and therefore, very often people just would presume that we didn't speak Spanish. And then just from looking at us, but I would say that, the living in California, growing up in Southern California, And I don't know that I would, again, call it a tribulation as much as something that in retrospect I thought a lot about. When I was little, in my elementary school, I was the only girl who spoke Spanish in my class. There was one other boy who is Mexican. And I remember that as little girls, when we would play house with each other, as the resident Spanish speaker, I was often casted as the role of housekeeper. It's a stereotype that, when you're little, I think that I felt some sort of way about it, but I wouldn't have been able to articulate it. But in retrospect, and having grown up and thinking about it, so you realize how ingrained these stereotypes are, and how the assumptions that people make about whole swaths of language, not even nationalities or whatnot. And so, in retrospect, it's something that I've thought long and hard about, because I also do work with children. And so I think that having grown up with one foot in another country and in the United States, it's always made me very cognizant of those experiences, wherever those experiences bring you from. So.
Right. And at the time, the teacher back then, I'm sure didn't even think that was anything wrong with that, right? I mean, didn't enter.
I don't recall there ever being any sort of an interaction in which that was not. But I don't know.
The teacher may deviate that a little bit if they were kind of on board or somehow.
I mean, I know that if I, as a teacher, were to see something like that, I would question the children about their choices. Why did you cast Eva to be why is Eva the housekeeper? And having them challenge those assumptions that put kids in those places in the first place. So, it's not about reprimanding it. It's about having people think about it. Just what made you think that first?
Right, exactly.
And I don't think it comes, I really, really don't think that it was an ill-intentioned, from little kids, but at the end of the day, it really was kind of I remember there was a blonde girl that was the mom, and it was the brunette girl that was the dad, and it was
Right, that's maybe what they saw on TV too, right? Of course. But getting into like, when you say, it's Ruiz, you're Spanish, that's common, but then did you find Americans just think everyone comes from Mexico if they speak Spanish?
In California, yes. So it brings me to makes me think of a story in which I was already in college, and I was with two friends of mine who are Mexican, and we were walking, we were speaking in Spanish, and a guy came up to the three of us and asked us, "What are you?" So he didn't assume we were all Mexican. That wasn't the first assumption, but he was asking where we were from. And my two friends said Mexican, and I said Spanish. He goes, "I know you're Spanish, but what are you?" I was like, Spanish, like you might want to call it Spaniard if that helps. But it's
that country over there in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
Peninsula, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was, I remember that moment of him saying that to me, treating me like I was ignorant in not answering his question, but thinking, really, it's your ignorance that would even have you be so rude in the first place without the it's the semblance of curiosity without thinking through it a little bit deeper, right?
But why was he even asking that? I mean, was he genuinely?
We were speaking in Spanish, so he might have thought we were from whatever country, as opposed to, because the three of us are Americans,
right?
But amongst my friends who speak Spanish, whenever given the opportunity, I generally always speak in Spanish to Spanish speakers. So.
Yeah. So, right. So you have. So that brings us back to preconceptions of Americans, right? That's kind of really kind of gets us to. So in your experience, you just have one, your preconception, everyone's from Mexico. I mean, what else did you struggle with? Is there anything else that as soon as you spoke Spanish, everyone just thought something of you? Different? Better? Maybe better. I mean, I would find intriguing and better for me.
Yeah, no, it depends on the background of the person, I guess, and their thinking. I would say that the one thing, and again, not difficult, something that I actually really appreciate, is that I never quite felt American. I always felt Spanish in the U.S. and I always felt American in Spain. And I actually like the otherness. Like for me, that's actually very comforting, the otherness, the homogeneity of either of these two countries, of Spain or the US, which, at this point, Spain, Barcelona especially, where my family's from, is not homogenous at this point. Because of all the immigration. And the US was never homogenous, except for that there's just a sold notion of it, right?
Right.
I would say that was always quite discomforting. The idea that everyone should be one way or the other, Our home, we celebrated all the things that every American does. We celebrated Thanksgiving, but we celebrated our Thanksgiving with a Peruvian family. And so our Thanksgiving, had papas a la huancaína, and it had paella sometimes, and it was, and we had turkey. So, but the turkey might have a little more of a different flavor to it. Yeah. So, I think that if anything, for me, it was never a negative. It was always just one of those things that it was one extra layer. And if you care to know more about it, I'd love to talk about it. And if you're not curious, then your problem. Your lack of curiosity. But it definitely defines me, and it's definitely something that I appreciate. And I appreciate it in others too.
Yeah, I got defined from being, a redneck from the country. It's we all get defined by certain things. When I moved to the city, right? And then my friends in the city never visited me. From the country, they just hated the city. So it's funny how worlds are different. So we're coming to our end here, and we ask people to share with us something physical that is an heirloom or something. Do you have anything, Eva?
Yeah, so I did. I have these scissors here. I don't know if you can see exactly how beautifully ornate they are. They're from Toledo, which is not where my family's from. But I recall about these scissors is that they were always on my grandfather's desk. And so my grandfather, my grandparents, on my mom's side, actually, there's a picture here of them on their wedding day. My grandfather on my mother's side just had a million tchotchkes of all sorts from all their travels through Spain. And these were just scissors that I always admired. And when I was given the opportunity, these are the scissors I got. So
it's always nice to have something handed down, something beautiful like that too. Okay, so Richard is going to come on and wrap us up here, and hopefully we'll see you on the next G session.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Wow, what a great story. Thank you very much for sharing. My name is Richard Pelzer. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing for the G Project. As Alyssa Chrisman mentioned in the beginning, we are a public art project. I would love to invite everyone to our website, which is gproject.org. And I ask you to please sign up for all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and now this new YouTube channel. If you are new to our YouTube channel, I ask everyone to please subscribe right there below. And we would love to actually hear any comments. So please catch us every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new story. And we ask you to please share your project. And we ask the question, what is your G status? Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you soon.